Well, China has spoken on the deal agreed after President Xi and Trump sat across the table in Buenos Aires. I mean, it has said it will implement the changes as soon as possible. That's as far as it's gone in terms of any timescale. It said the meeting was a very successful one. It's now confident on implementing the commitments that were agreed. But as soon as possible is all we're getting in terms of detail from the Chinese government at the moment in terms of implementing the changes that were agreed. And I think that particularly pertains to tariffs on automobiles imported into China from the United States. I mean, President Trump has claimed that China has agreed to cut that tariff from 40 down to 25%. So we have, as soon as possible from the Chinese side, that puts China at odds with what we got from one of the White House's most senior economic advisors, Larry Kudlow. He was talking over the past couple of days about pledges from the Chinese side to make changes immediately. So two different versions of the timescale here.
Robin, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's take a look at what Asian stock markets did at the end of trade. They slipped quite badly on Wednesday following that sell-off on Wall Street. Worries about the global economy and corporate earnings growth. Financial stocks and car and machinery stocks particularly badly hit on the Nikkei. Of course, those kinds of stocks are more sensitive to changing global demand. Chinese stocks also down as investors worried that that 90-day truce between the US and China was not long enough for the two sides to settle their differences. European stocks, they've opened and it's not looking good at all, especially in London. The market is down 1.32%. The DAX as well in Germany. European stocks are really following the lead on Wall Street and of Asia. Let's take a look now at what's been happening on Wall Street and in fact what's going to be happening on Wall Street through the week, because Michelle Fleury has the latest from New York.
Talk about a quick sugar high, the sort of crash that comes after. We've seen all of the major indexes down more than 3%. You've got, as you mentioned, the bank stocks leading the way, but it wasn't just bank stocks. It was transportation stocks, industrial stocks, Caterpillar, General Electric, you name it. So many of these stocks were in the red. A lot of this has to do with concerns or warning signals flashing from the bond market, suggesting that there's perhaps worries about economic growth lying in the future. The yield curve, you touched on that. This is this idea that the interest paid on two-year bonds is actually the gap between that and the interest paid on 10-year bonds is narrowing. It's what they call flat. It hasn't inverted yet, but the suggestion is that if it does invert, then the likelihood of a recession is much higher, and that's why market watchers are sort of paying so much attention to this and getting spooked today.
That is Michelle Fleury in New York, making sense of the yield curve for us, which is great. We've got Trevor Greetham with us, who's head of multi-asset at Royal London Asset Management. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Trevor.
So you were listening to all of that. We're looking at the numbers behind us. I mean, it's looking pretty grim for Europe already.
Yeah.
Give us your take on the last few days.
Well, I mean, the main thing is we had the stock market weakness in October running into November, which has resulted in quite a lot of policy changes. So China's stimulating its economy. Trump has actually, we think, cancelled the 25% tariffs from January he was going to put on Chinese goods. We've had a big drop in the oil price. The US Federal Reserve isn't in such a hurry to raise interest rates. So there are positives out there. But last night we had another tweet from the President of America saying, "I am Tariff Man. And if I don't get a good deal with China, there'll be no deal with China."
It's a new superhero.
I know. You've heard of Rocket Man, now there's Tariff Man. And he finished the tweet by saying, "Make America rich again." Immediately the Dow Jones Index dropped 800 points. Because the markets don't want tariffs. It's throwing sand in the gears of global business to have tariffs. I don't think we're going to have them either. I think there's a lot of soap opera with Trump. And I think he's moving towards some kind of deal with China. I think what he was annoyed about was he likes to kind of brag about what the deal was when it was a behind closed doors conversation. The Chinese kept quiet, and he was cross about that. So he's sort of saying, "If I don't get a good deal, there won't be a deal." And the Chinese overnight have said, actually, there is a deal, we made lots of progress. And that's why the market sell-off in Europe is much more muted than you might expect after a 3% drop in Wall Street. Things are starting to pick up again.
Got to talk about Brexit.
Well, we do have to talk about Brexit because it's a defeat for the government. What do the markets make of all this?
Markets think it's going to go that way. They've no
What is that?
idea.
Which way did that say it again?
The pound is going to go that way.
Oh, so that's clear as crystal.
Basically, you now have got the options of Theresa May's deal, no deal or no Brexit. Theresa May's deal seems like it won't fly. So it's almost down to no deal versus no Brexit. And no Brexit became more viable yesterday with the initial ruling from the European Court of Justice, saying
wasn't
that
a ruling, it was a recommendation,
opinion.
remember?
It was
We
an
have to be very
opinion.
careful about that.
an initial opinion, but it was very, very much expected that the ECJ will back up that opinion from their Advocate General. But what it said was that you can look at the 2-year Article 50 period as a cooling off period, like consumer finance. Britain can change its mind and go back to the old deal with rebates, without the euro, without Schengen, etc. So game on.
Okay, Trevor, we'll
Watch this space. The fat lady has not sung.
Let's see what song she does sing. Now, still to come, the countdown is on with Christmas almost upon us.